and say welcome everyone to the November 5th, 2025 meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m., noting that besides myself, Kevin Miller, we have Grant Farrington, Annie Pfaff, Dan Blanchard, and Michelle Hokinson on hand. First thing we have after that bit of preliminary is the public hearing. I'll read the notice. I think I've been remiss in not reading something to this effect in the past, but this is a public hearing. The owner applicant is seeking a demolition permit to remove an accessory building from the property located at 2 Chestnut Hill Road, map 51, lot 7. And according with the chapter 63 of the town code, demolition delay, the commission shall hold a public hearing to determine whether the building should be preferentially preserved, and this is the start of the hearing. As you recall, at our meeting on October 1st, we met and discussed the question of the first step in this process is whether we felt the building was historically and or architecturally significant, and most of that conversation was predicated on the fact that this particular, it's an outbuilding, alternately described as a pool house or a small cottage, but an outbuilding that unusually, but not without precedent, has its own MACRIS coverage. And it's also mentioned in the wider area coverage of the Chestnut Hill Farm area. And I think it was based, if I can characterize what the sentiment was at our October 1st meeting, I think the sentiment was that this was, at the very least, a historically significant building, and there was sentiment or desire to go out and have a site visit and to look into this a little bit more closely. We did that. We had a site visit on October 25th, which was a Saturday morning. It was attended by me, by Michelle, and by Grant. I did take photos at that time, and I believe Grant and Michelle, you did as well. The photos that I took, I sent out to the group earlier this week. And of course, we all had the benefit of the MACRIS coverage, the photographs. I also sent the homeowner, and I will say that the contractor whose name is on the application, Felix Wamburu of Southborough, was exceptionally helpful and exceptionally accommodating and exceptionally kind to me, and we had back and forth several times trying to get the site visit together. He was very helpful, and also the homeowner, Lana Dugdale, who the three of us met during the site visit on October 25th, was also exceptionally gracious to us and accommodating and welcoming. And she actually provided us, or gave to Michelle, which Michelle sent to me, and I distributed to the rest of you with the rest of the meeting packet, what amounts to a kind of affidavit regarding this building's history. Because if you remember, the MACRIS report indicated that the feeling was that this building could have originated its life actually as a chicken coop and may have been relocated. We also had a photo that appeared to show the building being brought in on a flatbed truck, a historic photo from would have been the very early 20s. And the affidavit that Ms. Dugdale gave us was really, really interesting and helpful. I hope everybody had time to read that, but I can bring it up if you want to take a look at that. I'm just trying to make sure I have it right here. Yeah, there it is. And actually, let me do that very quickly. Bring up my screen. There you go. And this is by the previous owner, I believe, prior to Ms. Dugdale. The little garden house started in November 1926 and was ready for guests in May of 27. Now, I stopped right there and say the MACRIS has it a bit earlier than that. Much of the old timber wainscoting, baseboards, and old bricks were brought in from our farmhouse in the lot in Fitzwilliam, that would have been in New Hampshire, which had previously been bought for a woodlot. The wood paneling and cupboard near the fireplace came from an old tavern in Federal Square in Lynn. The rest of the old paneling came from an old house near the corner of Union and Chestnut Streets in Lynn. The corner cupboard was given to me by Mrs. William H. Felt and came from an old house in Lynn. Two of the old windows were given to me by Mr. James Young and one by Mr. Alfred Whitney. The old front door was given to me by Mr. A. Smith of Old Winchendon and came from the L of his house built in 1781. He gave it to me on January 1st, 1927. The piazza door I bought from Mr. Blair and Fitzwilliam and was one belonging to the tavern. Many of the largest timbers came from our old barn near the Robbins place. On the old Fitzwilliam Road, the old pine cupboard with paneled doors and hinges I bought from Mrs. Fred Nichols on High Street in Winchendon, which is in total a kind of unbelievable account of provenance. And the building is thus a kind of fascinating amalgam of components, a sort of Frankenstein building, but nonetheless, really wonderful and really striking. And we have some earlier photos. There's some photos that I believe still exist on a real estate site that show how magnificent this building once was, both interior and exterior. So we know a great deal about the building and where it came from and where it was put together. I have some question about a couple of those dates because we initially believed that the Macris had it a little bit earlier than that. But in any case, the question now is the condition of the building and how we feel about the question of whether or not we should vote to preferentially preserve. And I think a lot of that is going to hinge on our assessment of the condition and its viability, whether it could be repaired or moved. And so at that, I would like to turn to first Grant and Michelle for what you saw and what you felt about it, because of course we haven't discussed this previously. Grant, do you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, first I want to also extend my thanks to the homeowner and Felix Wambaru. I think we were there close to an hour or over an hour looking at the property, so really got to see it well. To me, there's no question that it is historically significant, and I don't think it's beyond redemption, I guess I would say. It is a bit worse for wear. I think your photos showed that. Some of the it looks like rot on the gutter or outside and stuff like that is like almost completely gone. But inside, I thought this, structurally it seemed pretty sound to me. Um, you know, rough, obviously, there's nothing inside and that kind of thing. The other element of this is, I would say, not that this should necessarily be a factor, but with other, projects, it's clear that like the homeowner will stop at nothing to tear, the building down, that kind of thing. I didn't quite get that sense from the applicant. It seemed to me like there was an emotional attachment there. She had mentioned that there's, she has a photo or sorry, a painting of the building in her bedroom, I believe she said. So, I think perhaps there's hope there for some sort of resolution. But to me, I think it is. I would like to, move forward with a 9-month delay or up to a 9-month delay to see what can be done.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Michelle?
Yeah, I actually agree with everything that Grant has said, and I actually fell in love with the building. I thought that it's really kind of a shame that it's got to that condition that it's been. I mean, I don't really know any of the history of why it's like that. I mean, just broken windows and, a lot of rot in the roof and the floor. And I just thought, the one thing that really was touching when we have the provenance of the whole, the construction of the building. And I just think that it's just a gem, and I don't know um if it can be saved, but I'm sure that there are architects out there that can give us more more facts, because I don't know if it's beyond, beyond repair.
Um, Dan and Annie, I sent out the photos,
Mm.
the packet, not every photo that I took, but about I don't know, a dozen perhaps, without comment, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it would help you for me to bring some of those up and have you ask any questions you have, or to explain what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Would that help, or do you want that, or you just want to comment on your views of this?
Yeah, well, I can say I apologize. I wasn't able to make the site visit, and appreciate hearing all of your comments on that so far. Um, First, I would say, should we hear from I do see that we have the contractor in the
Yes.
audience. Should
Yeah.
we hear from kind of him first, or are we going to be hearing at some point, if there's any context that I missed on site? I think that would be helpful to understand, whether from you or from the contractor there. And, I don't think necessarily I need to go through the photos one by one, but I would say any commentary you want to share just generally would be helpful.
I can, and I do want to hear from Felix if he would like to speak. I will say, for my own part, um, this is a really painful one, and I think it's painful for the homeowner. It represents a very significant loss. Um, if this building is torn down. Um, my own view of it was that I think the moment has passed, unfortunately, for this building. And it's really quite heartbreaking because it has this wonderful provenance. It has elements of it that are, doors, small features that wide, I think they're 11-inch wide floorboards. But I think given the nature of the damage that we saw, the roof, the collapse of, the roof and the leaking that's been going on for quite some time. And I think maybe most concerning of all was one of the photos that I sent you all showed a very large hole in the floor. And that floor is really quite spongy. And Mr. Wamburu, indicated that they had an engineer come out and get down into the crawl space under that building and, look at it from the bottom. And what I suspect, and the news was not good. And I quite believe him on this point. And what I suspect is 100 years of rising damp. If that building was placed on its site in the early 20s or even mid 20s, it's sat there for 100 years. And in other words, there's some lovely photos, still extant on some real estate website. But I think that that building was in trouble when those photos were taken, and that you have very extensive rot underneath, as well as in the roofing structure, that just puts it, in my opinion, heartbreakingly, probably beyond saving. One thing I will say, and I'll let Mr. Wamburu speak for himself on this point, is that he did indicate that he and the homeowner were very much interested in salvaging as many of the elements of that building as they could. There's some wonderful sort of hand-hewn beams in it. There are windows that are, I believe they're, I want to say 4/12s. Really interesting divided light windows. The doors, for instance, I think one of my photos showed the cast iron pot hook in the fireplace, the old thing that you swing out and put a pot on. And, there was an indication, and I think they'd be very smart to do so, to try to salvage as many of those elements as they can and to incorporate them into the new building. So I was encouraged by that. Honestly, my heart sort of breaks both for the building and I think for the homeowner. I got the impression that this is one of these situations where it was closed up for a time and nobody was quite aware of how badly it was deteriorating. It's a wood shake roof. And it was leaking. And I think there was an issue with rising damp coming up from the bottom and causing a lot of rot. In other words, I don't think the problem with the building was coming strictly from leaks in the roof. I think it was coming up. So, my card's on the table. I think I'm somewhat at variance with Grant and Michelle in that I don't think that when I first heard about this building, the last thing I'll say, Annie, is that I immediately started scheming mentally as how we could save this. And the thinking was privately, was that if it was brought in on a truck, maybe it'll go out on a truck if the homeowner doesn't want it, or we can really not convince them to keep it or to restore it. But having seen it and having seen the extent of the rot and the sagging, I don't think there's, frankly, and it's a hard thing to say, that there's any chance that anyone's going to come pick up that building and move it. And so then it's a calculation. Of course, you can repair anything at the right amount of money, but I think the contractor and the homeowner judge it a losing proposition to try to do so. So it's an uncomfortable conclusion to arrive at, but that's where I sit. Dan, did you want to say anything at this point? You want to hear from Mr. Wambura if he wants to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to hear him speak. I have some thoughts on it, but if he's here, I'd like to hear him first, please.
Sure. Felix, would you like to be promoted? I can allow to talk, first of all. You're talking permitted, Felix. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. I was actually wondering why I couldn't unmute myself, but now I can see why.
I have the control on that one.
Gotcha.
So you're welcome and thank you for coming, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your opportunity to discuss this, and thanks for coming out and meeting with me. Just the backstory here is Lana Dugdale, who owns this property, had reached out to me early last year. And what she said was, I have a cottage. I would like to save this cottage. And I would like to know how we can go about salvaging the cottage. I hadn't seen it before. So I went on her site and looked at it. And my first impressions were, this looks farther gone than I would think of salvaging. But we had a structural engineer. His name is John Reel, and he's from Worcester. So we had him come out and just take a look and see what in this cottage can we salvage. What can we do from salvaging the whole thing to something in the middle to tearing it down completely. And after his assessment, his conclusion was, due to the damage that's structurally in the building leading from the foundation, that erecting something on top of the existing foundation would not even be feasible. We would have to knock this down all the way down to the foundation, just because of not only the structure itself, but the foundation itself is not also sound, because of how far gone this has happened. So I gave that feedback to Lana. And if you know Lana from town, she's a huge advocate of history. As you can see, she had the binder in her basement of the history of this property. And the first thing she told me to do was to look in the building and see what we can salvage because she would like to repurpose a lot of this items. Now, there's some connection with Bill's Reserve. I don't understand exactly what it is, but she does understand it and wanted me to salvage a lot of it just so she could reuse it for the next structure. So there are actually items that were loose on the wall that look like if they were left there any longer, they could probably fall and crumble. And I took those items and wrapped them, and they're literally stored in her home. And I'm not sure if I broke any laws or violations by doing this, but they're just things that were just loose that she did not want them to get damaged. A beautiful built-in corner cabinet that has some ceramic arch on the inside. That looked like it was just falling apart day by day. That's something that I took, wrapped it, and some of those items are actually um, in her garage because she wants to repurpose them when we do this property over. Some of the beams that are there, she wants to repurpose them, but she also understands with kids and children that this property is not something that is structurally sound and um, the structure engineer actually made a joke by saying he's surprised that um, the structure is still somewhat not hasn't collapsed, given how much water damage has penetrated, given how much foundational issues we have. So, one thing I want to emphasize is Lana is all about history. She's all about salvaging. I mean, if you walk through her home, you will see that she has kept just about everything that she can possibly keep and repurposed it. The trees around her house, especially one tree around her deck, is stapled, suspended because she just doesn't want to lose that tree because of the curb appeal and how beautiful and how ancient that tree is. So there's no doubt that she wants to preserve things. Um, so I think what I want to say from a structural perspective, just looking at this as a contractor, I I don't see where to even begin to try and salvage this building. Um, I can't see other than the beams that we can take and repurpose, which we have plans to do. I can't imagine what else we can save if we were to say let's get the things that are rotted out of the building. It's a big chunk of it that's pretty gone. And at this point, it's more of a safety thing because of her children being there that she wants to do something with it. And a little backstory is she did attempt to do something during COVID, but it seems to be, and that's kind of the explanation she gave me is I tried to do something during COVID with this and it just wasn't feasible. And she wishes she actually did something during COVID, but it's it's really deteriorated to the point that the structure engineer and myself both think that we not only need to take the building down, but we also need to remove the foundation because it's also not stable.
Right.
Um,
One question, Felix, and whether there was any discussion of potentially jacking the building up, running some steel, I-beam under it and actually repouring, a concrete foundation, or if it's the um, support system there won't, tolerate that kind of intervention.
yeah, it's really the support that's not going to be able to hold um, any kind of um, lifting or erecting of the building to replace the foundation. The foundation, if you, and I know it's probably daunting to go in, but if you go through the back, there's a crawl space, and if you go underneath that crawl space, which we crawled underneath, is all her plumbing, but you will see cracks that go all the way down to the foundation,
Yeah.
and that's that was the basis of the foundation has to be removed.
Right. And I will say I did observe it. I'm very happy to hear that, for instance, the historic like cupboards that are mentioned in that document that Lana gave us, which was very kind of her. And by the way, in a sense, makes her appeal more difficult, in fact, but she was gracious enough to give it to us. That those cupboards have been taken out and safely stored away. And I did notice that where they apparently were in the building, that even the 2x4 structural member had been carved out.
Right.
In other words, compromised to inset those. You know what I'm talking about? And that there's a one corner in particular I have a photo of where the 2x4 is really a
Yeah.
a
E- e- e-
1x3 kind of thing.
Right. So the general gist of what we did to salvage it was she really wanted me to salvage um, as much as I could and store it away. So if you noticed, facing the fireplace, to the right and the left of the fireplace, there was wood paneling that went up to the ceiling and went to the left, and it's the same kind of wood paneling that's behind. So all that wood paneling that's been removed, that was removed so we can repurpose it. So all that wood paneling has been saved in her garage, including the cabinet that's in the corner. Literally, the door to the bathroom um, has also been saved because the door was very unique to that bathroom. So all these are things that we cleaned up, we kind of brushed off, and we are hoping to repurpose them when we put the new, when we do whatever we're going to do in the future. And that also goes for those beams. I mean, we just can't take the beams because they're what's holding the whole thing together. But yeah.
Right. Can you all see that? I brought up that photo that shows the facing sides of the fireplace, and because I did wonder about, the elements that had been removed. So again, I'm glad to know that they're, regardless, that they're safely stored, and you've actually gotten them out and that they didn't just disappear into the ether. So,
Right. And the far left corner is where there was a beautiful, it's still intact. And I took it
uh,
out very carefully, but there's a
right
beautiful.
here where my cursor
Yeah, exactly.
is.
Where your cursor is, there's a cabinet that kind of tucks into that wall where the 2/3 of it is just cabinetry, and the top is like a dome, and the inside of the dome is concrete. It's just something like I've never seen before.
Right.
So I took that down and the framing around it, and that's also in her garage with intentions to
Yeah.
reuse that.
It definitely caught my attention, that spot in that corner, because as you know, the studs have been carved away fairly
Mhm.
significantly to accommodate that. So great. Does the anybody on the commission have questions for Felix following up?
I have a
No?
comment, but not a question.
Well, sure. Go
No.
ahead, Ann.
Yeah, so I really, really appreciate kind of hearing what Felix, is saying about the background and how Lana wants to save so much. In the beginning, before we heard from him, I was kind of on, the same page as Grant, that it's such a great building, and probably worth, trying to preferentially preserve. But it sounds like Lana is intending to do like kind of best case scenario of what we could expect at the end of a 9-month delay. She is intending to repurpose things, try to find a home for things that are salvageable. And I think that's kind of like probably what our objective might be at the end of a 9-month, to find someone that, if they're not going to restore the whole thing or move the whole thing, at least use parts of it. And so I'm really pleased to hear that. And I'm kind of in the stance right now of like, why delay it if in why make them wait 9 months if they're already despite demoing the building, kind of committed to preserving as much as possible.
Yeah, and I would say that, all of that kind of salvage work is expensive and time consuming. So if there's going to be, a commitment to that, it's something I certainly appreciate. And I would say that further, that any salvageable element of that building that cannot be used, I the applicant, depending on how we vote, is under no obligation, but if those could be made available to, there may be people in the community that want some of those elements, door, floorboards, some of that stuff is really, you can't buy it anymore kind of materials. So I appreciate the gesture. And again, I think it's a very hard situation. And I'm mindful of the fact that this is not something that I do believe the homeowner ever would have chosen. I think it's it's one of those things where it's, in a way, it's a cautionary tale about how quickly a building like this can get away from us if it's, closed up and not used, and suddenly there's a leak. And I suspect that the problems coming up on the foundation are pre-exist the current homeowner's ownership of the property, and just it rises to a level where then surprise, we've all, those of us that have old homes know that suddenly you're inheriting somebody else's problem that maybe they didn't even know was a problem when they owned it. So
Yeah.
Dan, did you have thoughts you want to?
I don't think I don't think waiting. I mean, I don't think having the building endure another winter, right? Any kind of salvaging work, any kind of, right? It's just going to make things even more painful and more hard and more destructive, right? So 9 months out from where we are, I'm not sure. Right? I mean, the building itself is a beautiful testament to Yankee ingenuity, right? It's a hodgepodge of architectural salvage brought in from all over Eastern Massachusetts, right? And it's all assembled and it's all repurposed, it's all recreated into this one unique structure, right? And then they're going to take all of these pieces that can be salvaged and they're going to repurpose them into a new building, right? And so in many respects, it's kind of, right, it's an evolution of the salvage, right? But you've got pieces from Lynn, pieces from Winchendon, pieces from Fitzwilliam, right? And it's very much a Yankee kind of structure, right? You build it and you put it together, right? And that's what's so beautiful about the building. But the doors, I would like to know, if anything, if we move forward with the vote, I would really appreciate to know what is being salvaged, because I think that's a really important piece, right? Is what's going to happen to the chimney and the fireplace? What's going to happen to windows and doors, right? What is being salvaged and what can't be salvaged? And I know that that's a lot of work, but I think given the provenance of all of these pieces, right? But I'm very much in this idea, very much similar with Annie of, if the best case scenario is to take what we can and repurpose what we can and recreate something new with the salvage, it's very much in line with the building itself when it was first built. So
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. And well taken. The building is already an amalgam of parts, and if what's necessary to save the most interesting parts, like that, what was that, an 8/12? Some of those windows, some of the doors, whatever, if those elements can be saved and then incorporated into a structure that's going to help those things continue to live. And I will say that and hearing Felix talk, clearly he's already gotten out the most interesting stuff. The photos that I took don't show the really cool stuff. That's already been saved. So yeah. Anybody else want to, I mean, I don't want to belabor this, but I want to give everybody a chance to try to sway each other whichever way you happen to be leaning, or we can bring this to a vote. Any,
I'll just note that I really appreciate the context that Felix provided. I think where I'm at is I'm mindful of that whatever, if we do proceed with the delay, that we don't have to go the full 9 months, right? Like it's a, it's up to 9 months, but if we think that there's no movement, we could kind of really, I believe, right, Kevin, that we can kind of release it early if we chose to.
yes.
Um, you know, I'm kind of in the same, agree with Dan that, getting a sense of what exactly would be salvaged would be helpful to kind of understand um, the process better. But, I don't want to delay just for delay's sake, but I'm still having a bit, uh, I think, of trouble just kind of letting it go. So right now I would be leaning towards moving forward with the preferentially preserving it just because of its history, its importance, and seeing if there's any other solution. But grateful that salvaging is on the table.
I will say that I think, like I said, I think most of the stuff that's really salvageable in that building is already out. The couple of the windows and doors, certainly I would leave to, Felix and Ms. Dugdale's discretion. Can you pull up the floorboards? It depends on what they're really like underneath, and it's hard to say. I think there's some things that can still be pulled, like the pot hanger in the fireplace and stuff like that. But there's not a lot, beams. Of course, when they start to actually bring the building down, I'm sure Felix did indicate to me that there was an interest in saving some of those beams and repurposing them. But personally, I'm not sure I'd want to hold on that. I think I think this is a good faith kind of operation. But anybody else want to comment before we move to a vote on this? No? All right. Well then, so I will make the motion, and here's how it goes, right? This is the vote is to preferentially preserve the building. So I make the motion that that the Historical Commission vote to preferentially preserve the accessory building, under consideration at 2 Chestnut Hill Road. That would mean that if you're in favor of holding the building, you vote yes. If you want to let it go now, you vote no. Everybody clear on that? Okay, so again, the motion is to preferentially preserve the accessory building at 2 Chestnut Hill Road. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so I made the motion, Grant seconded. Roll call vote. Miller is no. Grant,
Yes.
Annie,
No.
Dan,
No.
Michelle.
Yes.
So it's 2-3 no. 2 yeses, 3 noes. Which means, Felix, that I will enter into the OpenGov system that we're releasing the building from our role in the process, and you're sort of free to move forward with what you need to do. And Godspeed and good luck. And I think I really look forward, and I have confidence that you and Lana are going to do everything possible to save as much of those wonderful melange of elements as you can. So thank you for coming out. And thanks to Lana for her hospitality also.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you to the rest of the team for discussing this and having me attend and giving me a chance to speak on Lana's behalf. And from a contractor's perspective, I can reassure all of you that I don't think I've met someone in Southborough that wants to preserve history as much as Lana. She's spent about almost $10,000 in just hiring me to preserve and remove all these things and do mold remediation on all the wood so she can reuse it down the line. So if there's anything else that we feel needs to be preserved, we're all ears. But I appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Felix.
Good night.
Good night.
And I will say I greatly appreciate and really respect the group that we can have good conversation, split vote, and move on to. I got outvoted on, I think, on the last one. So I think, what was I on the majority side this time? So this is the way it goes, and I think it's actually very healthy for the commission that we have the strong and diverse opinions. Moving on, Michael Wison at the Southborough Historical Society has indicated that they're really close. The society is really closing in on the completion of Fayville Hall, which is, as you all know, is going to be this tremendous, tremendous asset to the town, and they're getting very close. I have been privileged to have been over there periodically since there was a river running through the basement, literally, and a fast-moving one at that. And so I have seen, 5 or 6 times over the last couple of years, months elapse. I'm invited over again. I see where they're at in the progress. I've been a happy witness to how that building has gone from literally a shell and a not too stable one at that to something that's actually pretty magnificent at this point. And I think people are going to be very happy. They're in the home stretch. They've got their elevator is in. They're awaiting some kind of ramp for the main entrance is actually off to the side or in the back, and making last minute connections. But they are applying. We had earlier supported their application for, I believe, a couple of grants, and Michael came back to me and said, "There's another one we want to apply for, and we could use your help." And I said, do tell, let's hear about it. And I'll bring up, he asked for a letter. I'm going to bring up, sorry, it's a little bit hard to run all this stuff at once. Let me share my screen for you. They're applying for a Mass Cultural Council grant. And I drafted a letter for your review. This is very straightforward, simply supporting they need money for some odds and ends, basically, to get them over the top. And I will say that I don't want to steal any of the society's or Michael's thunder, but they're shooting to have an initial event, if all goes well, at the new History and Arts Center at Fayville Hall before the end of the year. So it's getting very close, but they could use some help in the form of a Mass Cultural Council capital grant for 2026. And so this is the letter. I'll just read it. Dear Cultural Council members, addressed to the Mass Cultural Council, we write in support of the Southborough Historical Society's application to the MCC's Capital Grants Program for 2026. The Society has invested over $2 million in its recently restored facility, Fayville Village Hall, which is certain to bring new life to the heart of the historic Fayville area of Southborough, as well as to the wider community. We expect that this architectural gem, built in 1911, will serve not only as a cultural magnet, but as an economic engine for local businesses, and that the robust schedule of projected classes and events will offer a broad range of opportunities for area artists, writers, musicians, craftspeople, and researchers. The History and Arts Center at Fayville Village Hall is critical to the preservation of Southborough's history, as it houses the bulk of the town's historic artifacts and offers a unique chance to enrich the town's cultural life and the cultural life of surrounding communities. The Southborough Historical Commission hopes that the Mass Cultural Council will support the Fayville Hall initiative with as much enthusiasm as we do. Sincerely, from us to them. So it's very straightforward. There is, Michael has a very ambitious program of public-facing events classes, concerts, um, arts kinds of things. It'll be, available. The archive is really what an upgrade over the basement of the Flag School. I can tell you that. And so I do think and hopefully will drive activity to area restaurants and all kinds of things from visitors. So I'm very comfortable getting behind this for the society, and hope you feel the same. Do anybody have comments on this? Are you okay with this? Do you want to support it? You want to change something? Have at it.
Yeah, Kevin, quick question. I guess what exactly are we supporting here? What is the ask from the Historic Society?
He's asking for more money from.
Okay, so like, I mean, do we get an opportunity to look at what it is he's asking for before we sign a letter of support?
It, as I understand it, it's asking for funds to complete certain elements. He's got a little bit of work on a ramp. They have, for instance, these are the things that he's indicated to me are currently outstanding. There's parking lot lighting that has to be addressed at some point. They haven't laid their parking lot yet. I think that's pending. Down to small things like the state requires the elevator. That building never had an elevator, and now it does for um, ADA access. It's required to have a landline telephone in it, believe it or not, which is apparently quite expensive. And, so there's discussion about a handrail going up to the second floor. One side has it. Historically, the building doesn't. So, it's all a grab bag of odds and ends to get them fully complete. I mean, I would say the last time I was in the building was, gosh, 2 months ago. And at that point it was, 95. I can't give a number, but it was really close. So this is an effort there's a pool of money there to help get them, as I understand it, over the finish line, and that's what he's asking for. But I don't think Michael would be able to, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're supporting a swimming pool, or you know what I mean? It's again, a completion elements I think that he's looking for. Does that make sense?
I'll just note, I'm fine with the letter. I did just look up the grant, which I wasn't familiar with, and it does sound like a good fit in terms of the grant, as it sounds like is for cultural facilities in Massachusetts, and it seems like there's not a lot of, well, there are restrictions, but mainly kind of all stages of capital funding. It looks like it's actually awarded probably in like, sorry, I just had it here and I lost it, but May of 2026, I think, or March to May 2026. So that's the timing of it, what it looks like. And the application deadline looks like mid-December. So I'm fine with this letter. I think it's well written.
Yeah, I do know the deadline is closing in, and again, as I understand it from Michael, it's a sort of general pool of money to help this type of facility get off the ground. And they're definitely, I think they've spent at this point roughly twice as much as they anticipated initially. And so I think there's always a need for, as I understand it, and thank goodness I'm not in the situation of trying to bring this larger project over the finish line, but that there is a need for additional dollars to get them where they need to be.
It sounds like, Kevin, that most of the outstanding items are to make it ADA compliant?
Yes, that's my understanding as well is that these are, in fact, I have a related issue to bring up with the commission on that,
Mhm,
that score, but that's where they're at.
mhm.
So it's, you know, substantially, you walk in right now and it's quite beautiful, really. People are going to be very pleased, I think. And I do think, as I understand what the plans are to sort of utilize the building. For instance, Michelle, the basement of the building, where formerly really it was a river runs through it kind of situation, they excavated several feet, put in this very elaborate drainage system to deal with the fact that there is actually an underground stream running right beneath the building. Um, and the way it sits now, they managed to get, I never thought it was frankly going to be possible, but it's basically like art studio space in the basement where they can run like pottery classes, or they've got, you know, good lighting, actually windows, a nice floor, and there's going to be, I believe, like a catering kitchen in one portion of it. They've got archival space in another portion, and then the main part of it has art studio type space, and they plan to run a lot of classes there. It's sort of a miracle to me of something of hard-headedness and engineering that they actually were able to pull that off, because you wouldn't have thought it. It was kind of a train wreck a couple of years ago. So um, it's I do think there's going to be a lot going on over there once they finally get open. Um, any other thoughts on this? We'll just move this to vote. Vote against it if you don't want to do it. That's totally fine with me. But anybody want to tweak any language or something you don't like or whatever? If not, all right, then I will make a motion that we approve this letter as shown on the screen to the Mass Cultural Council in support of the Southborough Historical Society's application for an MCC capital grant in 2026. Is there a second?
I second.
Thanks, Michelle. So roll call vote. Miller is aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
5-0. Thanks, folks. Now, the second thing does go to this. I think the main thing, Michelle, like holding up or it's not holding up, but the principal hurdle, I believe, as I understand it, that the Fayetteville Hall project is has remaining on its plate are some issues involving ADA access, or, you know, complete, you know, the word is failing me, but full access to the building. And it revolves principally around two areas. The front entryway, which was, you know, the pillars and the front entryway to Fayetteville Hall was really sort of desecrated back in 1978, when the entryway was vastly altered. The pillars were removed. There was like a steel and glass door put in, you know, like a modern, ugly looking kind of thing. And the society has gone to great pains to restore the entry with a high regard for historical accuracy. And the same goes with the main staircase, which is another pending challenge for them to get to completion, is that it never had a rail on the outer portion of it. And so, you know, as Michael's explained to me, that the society may seek some sort of waiver, which, as again has been explained to me, is available at a state level for historic buildings, so that an exemption from certain elements of the basically building code elements, to allow for a historically accurate presentation of the building. And so that's where they're at right now. And I did talk to, we have a brand new building inspector who's come back to Southborough, recruited back to take on that position. And it's just, I had a conversation with him yesterday, of some length, and he's just Mark Robideau, and he's a wonderful guy. And at Southborough is really lucky to have been able to bring him back. And I said to him that I support, and I believe that the commission would support, to the extent that in his capacity as the building commissioner, felt it was both feasible and consistent with public safety, waivers or exemptions, again, where they were possible and where they were consistent with public safety, that would allow Fayville Hall to open looking as historically accurate as it possibly could. In other words, that naturally we were in favor, for instance, of some way to treat the front entryway that didn't involve a whole bunch of ramps. For instance, when you're going to have a ramp at the main entrance, which is actually going to be at the rear. The front entrance to that building is going to be essentially largely ornamental. It's not considered the main access. I'm no expert on any of this stuff, but I didn't have a problem with the principle of, again, consistent with the professional judgment of the building inspector or the authorities at the state level, and consistent with public safety. I wouldn't have any problem saying that I was in favor of whatever could be done to show some flexibility in that regard. And Michael has indicated that is a process that's possible. It comes down from the state. So, initially, he had asked me if we would consider writing a letter to that effect. And I said, at this point, I didn't think it was the best thing for us to do. I just had I had a cordial conversation, very cordial, with the very supportive and really nice new building inspector that we have, and just said that we're, whatever can be done, the historical commission would be appreciative. And that's where that's at. I don't know if, it's worth taking a vote at this point on this, because we're indicating support for something fairly amorphous, but I did want to put it to you, folks, that's basically where this is going. Does that make sense at all?
Is this,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan, sorry.
sorry, is this similar to maybe, is this similar to the library, where access to the library is by the elevator on the bottom floor, rather than repurposing the front steps of the library?
Dan, that's an excellent point. And I would answer, to my understanding, again, this is not my project and not my building, but yes, you're looking at the exact same thing. You have the grand ornamental entryway to the library, right, on Main Street, that nobody uses. It's there to look good, but the main access is, of course, the side, the Marlborough Road side, where this ramp and necessary elevator and so on. So yeah, I think that's essentially what Michael is trying to pull off. And as he explains it, again, this is, it's hearsay. that this will, that the building inspector can only do so much. There has to be, but there may be an appeal to the state at some point for a waiver of some of these contemporary code requirements to account for the fact that this is a building built, 114 years ago, and that they would like, there was an emphasis, as I understand it, at the time the town sold the building, a request from the select board and from the then historical commission to really do as much as possible to restore the Central Street facade to what it was historically. And of course, what it wasn't is, something with a, very large ramp coming up it. Ultimately, that's going to be up to, as I understand it, the building commissioner and state officials. But yes, similar to the library, where you have, to the best of my understanding, and remember that those library steps were rebuilt in the last several years, that it looks wonderful, but it's not in routine usage. I've never seen any of those.
I think there is enough. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I look at the townhouse, which is another example where access is via via an elevator from a parking lot in the rear of the building.
Right.
And so
I had this conversation with somebody. I think it was Mr. Haggerty, our town clerk. I was down at the townhouse today, and this came up that the townhouse is the same way. You've got only a couple steps, of course, at the front of the building, but there's no ramp there either. The main entry is from the back, from the parking lot, and it's that they've redone those ramps at the back just in the last month or two, and really nice job, and access is actually improved because they've added additional. Have you seen it? Additional access points at the back. So yeah, I think that's what Michael is shooting for. And I just wanted to get it out there. I don't, at some point, he might ask for our support. I don't want to belabor this, but if anybody else have any thoughts or objections to this idea? Oh, I'm sorry. I've had this letter up there all this time. Hold it down.
On that one, I'm a bit more hesitant, or at least I'd want more information about what exact waivers they're requesting, to be honest with you.
And
for
that's
this one where they're just applying for a grant, and I don't need to know exactly what work is being done. It's presumably the grant would be consistent with kind of getting the center open. But in terms of waivers, just my default position is like laws exist for a reason, so there should be a good reason to go around them. So I just need more information, I think, before taking a vote.
I agree with you entirely, Grant. And after having chatted with Mr. Robideau and then with Michael again today, Michael was initially asking us to write a letter to this effect, but he's agreed that let's just see how things develop. And I think that's fair to all parties. And again, I see and appreciate, for instance, what a building inspector has to do to protect the public and to protect the applicant. Favor like that. So, I have high confidence in the players involved in this, and so let's see how it proceeds. Moving on, we're at our FY 2027 budget request. Annie, can I call on you to kind of take the lead on this?
Yes, I am here. I just need to stay off video for the time being, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So it's that time of year again that we need to do our annual budget request. So Kevin had sent me this. I actually Kevin, I wanted to ask about this. The spreadsheet you sent me already had something populated in it. for FY 2027. So is that something that you had put in there, or do you know where that's coming from?
I did not put that in there. I do know where it's coming from, I think.
Okay.
And that is there is a move to, this is to avoid, of course, a massive budget increase and, concerns about spending. I'm just trying to pull this up on my other screen very quickly. I
Yeah,
apologize.
so our FY 2026 budget is $1,500, of which we have spent very little this year. I think we've done like one sign for $73. So almost halfway through the year, and not a lot of our budget has been utilized, which has been a pattern for the past couple years. FY 2025, our actual expenditure from our regular budget, not the ARPA, was $249. And then in FY 2024, our actual budget was 307. So we have a history of kind of pretty significantly underutilizing the budget that we have requested. So again, this year we had requested 1,500. Halfway through the year, we're at $73. And in the budget spreadsheet that we received from the town finance office, there's a column that says what our FY 2027 request would be. And it was pre-populated with $249, which was our FY 2025 actual. So my guess is they're trying to reduce us to, kind of what a more, typical or realistic budget might be. I have some thoughts about that, but just wanted to ask if Kevin had any other, other background that perhaps I wasn't privy to.
Yeah, Annie, my understanding is that that was the strategy to auto-populate all these FY 2027 requests with the FY 25 actual number.
Okay. So kind of like
So,
across the board, not just targeting us, kind of that was
yes,
okay.
that's what I understand it to be.
Okay.
And you know, I will say that that numbers the FY 2025 and the FY 2024 seems a little low to me somehow because I mean the 249 that they have as the number,
Mm-hmm.
and I should have inquired about that. That's like
Yeah.
we had the part we had the was that the we had the
Well,
party for the
that was
National Register, and then we had signage, and I just don't see
We've been
getting it.
heavily reliant on ARPA, though, right?
yes, we had been so heavily reliant on ARPA, and because that was time limited, our priority was to spend those funds that we had been granted and not our historical commission budget.
Right.
ARPA was kind of use it or lose it. Also, our typical budget is, but we wanted to make sure we took advantage of that special funding. So I kind of feel like our typical budget was oddly underutilized. In a normal, in a normal cycle, we probably would have spent a little bit more.
Right, right. No, that's a good point. And I'll just to cut to the chase on this, I would say that so they auto-populated the fiscal 2027 budget request at $249. In fiscal
Yeah,
2026, we had 1,500. We're not going to spend anywhere near that.
we're not.
What I'll just throw out to the group, my gut reaction would be by all means, let us reduce the fiscal 2027 request, but I'd like to reduce it not to $249, but to something on the order of 1,000 from
Yeah.
1,500, which would be cutting us by 33.33%. Which, and it gives us some, because what we're slowly doing, of course, is as we move these, as we, approve historic house signs, and we've got one on the docket tonight, and we've got one still pending. Every time that happens, and we've been successful at this so far, the money comes out of our annual budget, And if a donation comes in, and they've been coming in very consistently, it goes into our donation account, which is, once you buy a prize, it's yours to keep. We keep the money.
Right.
And so we're slowly building, the whole goal of this was to slowly build a war chest that we would be able actually to do things, signage or whatever it is, without always having to either worry that we're going to exceed our budget or have to go groveling for the funds, and that donors would know that that money was, the system of
Right.
providing the signs for free and then asking for a donation that the donors know goes specifically to historical, is not going to go back into the
Right.
general fund. It's not going to go to free cash. It's just
Mhm.
going to stay with us. I think has been very appealing to the people making the donations. So I would hate to lose our capacity to do that, because if we get $249 next year, that's 3.5
Right.
house signs,
And I completely agree, Kevin. Those are all, perfect points. I would also say, first of all, I agree with, $1,000 request. I feel like that's still a meaningful reduction from 1,500, but maintains us at, in a, a good level. I have serious concerns about reducing, even further, definitely down to the 249 level, probably even the $500 level. Once you reduce, it's so hard to go in the opposite direction. And I think if we were to go down that low, it would be nearly impossible to get back up to a higher level if we had a increased need for the house signs, or another initiative that we wanted to support. So I do support a reduction off the top, but I think what they've pre-populated is a bit extreme.
Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that I think the reduction is extreme, and in previous years we've actually talked about trying to increase the budget. What I'm mindful what I'm mindful of is um, both the number of house signs. If we're trying to expand the program, I think we're trying to, right, get more applications. I don't know if we have a sense of how many we're at each year. Uh, Obviously, we kind of revamped it and that kind of thing, but how many can we kind of anticipate? I think we should probably build our budget around that in terms of if we think we're going to get 20 signs a year, then obviously we're going to need more than $1,000 or that kind of thing. The other thing is, I think there's some longer term, not longer term, but just other projects that we've been wanting to move forward with, and for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. One example is the Revolutionary War plaque, which I know that there's talk of a donor covering. I don't know if that's the full or partial cost, but that would be a significant expense. The granite abutment sign, I don't know what the mounting costs are for that. We might talk about this later, but the rural cemetery water tower, if there's has to be an initial, uh, assessment, that kind of thing. Um, that we don't have the funds for that in our budget. That would have to come from somewhere else. So there are kind of these other projects that pop up. I guess those might be one-off where maybe they're hard to budget for, and we just keep having to go to the select board. But I know that I just want to be mindful that those kind of, if we don't have any money to start with, then those might be hard to achieve. So I would, you know, you guys have been looking at the numbers at this more. I'd probably be hesitant to reduce it at all, but I guess maybe in goodwill we should, if everyone else is doing it, we should too, I guess. But maybe a slight reduction is what I'm thinking anyway.
Kevin, you're on mute.
I apologize. Michelle or Dan, do you have anything on this?
No, but I was, and speaking of the house sign, if you like you said, if you were to have 20 signs, you're over budget. So I just think that it's going to be difficult if we anticipate, really going full speed ahead with the campaign and then not have any funds to do it. I think that it doesn't make any sense.
Well, we had, when we kind of relaunched, we had a very significant flurry, and then it has died down. And $1,000 gives us about 13 signs, one a month. Which I think is not unreasonable. Grant, to go to a couple of your other comments, the Revolutionary War monument at this point, the donor's still there, and it's committed to the full amount.
That's good news.
The bridge abutment sign, I think, is going to be fairly nominal in cost if Chris Leroy can come through with what he's proposed doing for us.
Okay.
So I don't see any large, bill, so to speak, on the horizon. I do think it would be a gesture of good faith. I know this is a time of significant budget challenges for the town to say, all right, step down. I completely hear and agree with what Annie's saying about once you take it off, it's hard to get it back. If you look historically at our budgets, and they have been up and down, there have been some years going back a decade where it was substantially more than $1,000. I had those numbers at one point. And then we had a big drop and, big cuts, and then we clawed back. And I remember, I'm trying to, Annie, maybe you remember this better than I do, that I remember when we went through the FY 2026 one, I was kind of shooting significantly higher, and then we kind of backed off from it a little bit. And
Right.
yeah, I think that I'm kind of with you, that I think $1,000 is pretty reasonable. It's a gesture toward the town, but I don't think we can tolerate $249. I think that would be a big mistake. It would really hamstring us.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin.
That's helpful, Kevin, in terms of I wasn't sure where those stood in terms of potential one-time expenses. So thanks.
Do you want to vote this? Is everyone okay? Dan, I didn't mean to shortchange you on this, pun intended. Good. I will make a motion that we submit the FY 2027 budget request in the amount of $1,000.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant.
Aye.
Annie.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
And
Yes.
5-0. Give us $1,000. Come on.
Come on.
All right. Quickly moving on.
Kevin, can I say one other thing from the treasurer?
Yeah.
Just a reminder to please stop by the townhouse to sign the authorization form if you guys haven't already. No worries if you didn't, it's fine. Just stop by when you have a chance.
Can I throw in on that, Annie, that
Yeah.
I now occupy the moral high ground here, because remembering that we had a meeting tonight and that I didn't do it, I went down there this afternoon and saw the wonderful Debbie Ferranti and signed.
Well, you should have reminded us, Kevin.
I know. I have not done it myself, so I'm just as guilty.
Yes, well, I wasn't going to say, but I am the first one to have signed this document, and she got it right. You come in, she's such a lovely person. You say you go, this is the town accountant's office. You go in, and such a lovely person. She has it right there, and she was thrilled that I had shown up so I could seize the moral high ground here, and then hector the rest of you about getting down there some fine day soon. And
I'll try to get down there this week.
Yeah, we should do it soon. I'm out of town this week. Yeah, I'm zooming in from a hotel room in New York, but
oh goodness. All right, well then, yeah, definitely. Let's move this along. Thank you for dialing in. On the house sign program, the past business that we have is this doggone thing that's been hanging over is it the C.B. Wilson house or is it not the C.B. Wilson house at 24 East Main? Kelly had done all this, title research on the property. And I, again, looked at the document that she sent me. I don't know if everyone else has that document. It's a long trail of, the deed research. And it somehow gets to a place that's really inconsistent with the Macris. And I looked at it again, and I am just, at this point, completely baffled by it. I don't know if it's, Annie, well, this kind of stuff, like how easy it is to kind of trip on a crack in the sidewalk, as it were, and get
Oh,
off, you know? So I don't know if Kelly has found something that the Macris researchers did not, or there's some, glitch in her review of it. I can't make hide nor hair of it at this point. I've tried a couple times, and what I'm wondering is there anybody among the group that's willing to sit down with Kelly and go over? I can send you, or she can send you the long trail, and maybe you can figure out what I just can't. Part of the problem is, we've had this discussion, is as you go back on that property, all those East Main properties, it's a quarter acre, 4/10 of an acre kind of lot, and then suddenly it's 15 acres, and there's this, when that area was divided up, and there's some inconsistency there that I'm just having trouble. It's like trying to proofread your own document, so you get a little bit blind to something that's in front of you. So a fresh set of eyes would really help in this. I don't know if, and I I, I confess I was thinking of Annie or Dan because somehow, no disrespect, Grant and Michelle, you're welcome to jump in, but that, Dan with the, you all have research skills, but Dan is a bit of an archaeologist by disposition, as well as by, in fact. And Annie has the sort of real estate background that might be helpful here.
I wish I could. I'm having trouble fitting things into my day as it is. I think it would be difficult for me to find the time to commit to that. I'm sorry.
Dan, do you have like any experience like looking into the sort of deed research? And Kelly's got all the page numbers, and that it's just that Worcester County Registry of Deeds stuff is not impossible to navigate, but challenging, because the pre-19, what is it, Andy? The pre-1960 stuff involves different systems, and you have to go by page number, and I confess it's not easy. But
I don't have much experience. Any of my experience, I mean, I really, long time ago when I was living in Portsmouth, and just kind of doing some ad hoc pieces here and there. But I'd be happy to take a look and see if I can make a dent in it.
Let me
now would be more preferable than later, because certainly my plate is full, but as we get closer to end of term, things will become far more problematic for me to find time. But I can certainly, start and see what I can do.
I appreciate that, and I will, and in that spirit, I will send you the Kelly's document tonight. And
yay!
You may, it just may, a fresh set of eyes, you may see something that Kelly and I are missing. And because I really would like to resolve this one. Now, one we can resolve, I think, fairly quickly, is the matter of 34 Main Street. The homeowner here, and I just bought the property, Michael Badjo, Badjo, contacted me, is interested in a house sign. I will quickly share my screen once again and show you the property in question. Hang on. Let's see, where did it go? Okay. There we are. That's the house. It is just west of the crossroads of, Marlborough Road, Corderville Road, and Main Street, on the south side of the street. That's obviously photo taken from the sidewalk. I do believe that I sent you all the Macris coverage. Did I just bring it up on the screen? Can you see that? Are you still seeing the photo?
We're still seeing the photo.
Okay, let me alter the share here. Okay. This is the Charles L. and Marie E.H. Fairbanks house at 34 Main, at Queen Anne, circa 1895. Of course, it does sit in the heart of our new National Register district. The coverage is very, I thought, very clear and pretty comprehensive. There's a older, that photo would have been taken, you know, in the 70s. That's coming in at 2000. But it's a beautiful, well-maintained house with a nicely articulated history. We know I don't think there was any doubt about the name. It's a lovely house in wonderful condition. And to me, this is an easy one to do straight away.
Mhm.
Any comments or thoughts on this application?
It's a really lovely house. I had the pleasure of selling it earlier this year, and I agree, Kevin. It's kind of a slam dunk for a house sign.
Yeah, it seemed a real easy one, and we know, and it's not, you know, what makes this one easy were the unfortunately that 24 East Main one is so vexing. Is that, you know, we've got a clear, you know, circa 1895, and we have the name Charles L. And, you know, if you read the coverage on it, I don't think there's any ambiguity on this one. It is Charles L. and Marie E.H. Fairbanks. So, and that's it makes the lettering of it a little bit complex but I think it's good to have both names on there. Charles L. and Marie E.H. Fairbanks house, circa 1895. And that's the motion I would make if you're all amenable.
Yes.
That sounds great.
Any comment before we just go to a vote on this? Fantastic. So I will move. I got to look at my note again. My apologies. On the bear with me. That we approve again. And you know, we always forward then the verbiage first to the applicant homeowner, and then the draft of the art to make sure that they approve. But it would be the Charles L. and Marie E.H. Fairbanks house, circa 1895, with that wording for a historic house sign. That's the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Grant. Motion made and seconded. We'll go to roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant?
Aye.
Annie?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
5-0. Thank you. Approved. Look forward to getting it. And another nick out of our budget. So we're making progress on the budget. All right. So I'm going to skip ahead one item. I got to come back to this, and it's actually very important. But I will say, in terms of chair's report, moving to item 7, as part of the Historical Society's move from the Flag School over to the new Fayetteville Hall, which we discussed at some length earlier, Michael Wyson engaged in the final clean out of the Flag School. And as I understand it, John Parent and the facilities team is already in the process of, they've got a contractor come in, they're clean, the asbestos remediation, all kinds of stuff. And of course, that is going to be the future home of, as I understand it, Youth and Family Services. But there was a lot of stuff to get out. And as a result of that, I now find myself in possession of about 450 copies of Fences of Stone. Paperback. 450 plus a lot. And of course, we have no storage space, so I literally am in possession of 450 copies of Fences of Stone, which is a lot of boxes of books, my friends, and really heavy. And got them over to my house, and I would like to discuss with you the disposition of those books. That's one thing that I recovered of course, with Michael's generous assistance and cooperation. On behalf of the Historical Commission, we now have 450 copies of Fences of Stone, which I think are of considerable value to us. More shortly. Also recovered was a box of little girls' dresses that were made for the celebration of the bicentennial in 1927 and worn by participants in those festivities 100 years ago, or well, 98 at this point. I promptly turned those over to Michelle, who is our rep on the Tricentennial Committee, and I'm hoping there was a few little mouse droppings in one of the boxes, which I nearly shook out onto her dining room table. But now that Michelle is in possession of those dresses, I sincerely hope, with the compliments of the Historical Commission and the Historical Society, that Tricentennial will be able to make some interesting use of them, whether for display or perhaps if cleaned a bit. They're actually in quite good condition, but for a couple stray mouse droppings. And perhaps a young girl will wear one of them.
Well, I mean, actually, it's very exciting, and it's exciting with the little letter that came with it too. And I will share that with the Tricentennial at our next meeting. And I will assure you that we will find a use for those cute little dresses.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So, and unfortunately, that there are other items that there's a fair amount of textiles, which are very, of course, very, very difficult to hold and preserve properly. And unfortunately, some of the textiles in the possession of the society just simply did not survive. It certainly didn't survive the move. And then there were others, I've just mentioned that Michael came out with an unbelievably ornate silk dress, period dress that I think his intention is to actually to donate that to the MFA if they'll have it, because they simply, the preservation of textiles is a really complicated thing in terms of temperature and humidity and air and UV exposure and stuff. And so his feeling was that the only hope of saving something like that was actually to get it into, the hands of an institution like the MFA. But in any case, so 450 copies of Fences of Stone, the box of girls' dresses. I did recover the Historical Commission's paper files, which had sat in Flag School for years. It amounts to really one large file drawer, and they're kind of a mess. And so I made Dragoon, he may live to regret this, our newly installed vice chair, to help sort out that
I'm happy to.
mess, because you have the archival bug, I think, So, and then the last thing that I ended up with was a couple of very, very interesting old historic firemen's helmets, like leather, like really old and really cool and actually in pretty good shape. Those I intend to turn over to our fire chief, as I had actually done with the previous fire chief, with some materials we recovered from the old fire station before St. Mark's took it down. And remember, we were offered a tour and we recovered some stuff during the tour, actually. And I turned that stuff over to them, and it ended up in their display case. As you come into the police and fire station on the right, there's that nice glass display case that houses the items that I had previously given. So I look forward to adding those helmets to their collection. with regard to the 450 copies of Fences of Stone, if anybody in the Historical Commission doesn't have a copy, I got one for you. Um, Dan, do you have one? Grant, do you have Fences of Stone?
I do. Thank you.
Do Grant, Dan, you do? Yeah, Michelle I know does, and I'm sure Annie does.
I have a copy, but it's actually quite old and tattered. If there's a new copy, I'd love one.
You
Um,
got it.
and
You
actually, is there a way to like purchase or just have a couple copies to have on hand? I don't know how that works, but I would love a couple to give out as gifts or just to friends who might be interested.
coming to that, Annie. I'm glad you asked. Now, here's my thinking, and I'm completely open to suggestion. The thought here was they're in boxes, by the way. I have maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 loose copies, but they tend to be in nice, sealed, still from the printer, cardboard boxes of 24. And one thing that occurred to me, and not just because we have a realtor on our commission, but I do know that, although I don't recall any realtor ever giving me a gift when I bought houses, and I've done it 3 times, but that often, there's some sort of gift kind of thing. And I thought any realtor in Southborough that sells a house or sells houses really ought to have a box of Fences of Stone, so that if they sell a historic house to somebody in town, they can say, congratulations, and here's a book.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
were to,
totally.
if we were to sell those, let's say, a box of 24, $120. That's $5 a book. That is a bargain. The cover price of these books there's paperbacks, but the cover price is $30.
What a
So
deal.
we would be presenting, and there are, I don't think, Annie, it's any surprise that you're not the only real estate broker in town. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
If every realtor in town wanted to buy a box, if we could move 7 or 8 of these boxes, that's $1,000 into the donation account. And the other thing that I had thought and had hoped, and I knew about this months before, and of course, we didn't, because it was all in flux, and we didn't do a town day thing, and then town day was canceled because of the weather this year. But I could imagine Town Day 2026, especially moving, this is the, 2026 is going to be a big year in America for American history. And then with our tricentennial coming up in 2027, I'd like to have a booth at Town Day, next, what is it? September. And we could sell, hopefully, and of course that forces me to keep all these doggone books for,
I think that's a great idea, Kevin. The other thing we could do if we want is, obviously giving it to realtors would give it to new homeowners, but there might be existing historic homeowners in the town who might be interested or not have it. So maybe put out something on our website about kind of similar to the historic home program about make a donation of whatever, $10, and get a copy of it or something might be nice.
Yeah, we could do that. I just the part of the reason the realtor.
No, I think that's I think that's
I wanted
great
to
too,
move.
right?
I want to move them out in bulk.
Yeah. No, I think
Right.
that's also great. Yeah.
Instead of having people pull into the driveway at 18 Latasquama, and I have to run out with collect $5 and put a book through the window. There's got to be like some way to distribute quickly, and it's a pity that Town Day is biased now for another 9 months or something. But so, would you guys support the idea of reaching out to some some of the local real estate agencies and companies or brokers and saying,
Yes.
interested?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much?
Mhm.
I was trying to move them at a low rate, but is that too little? Would it be 10? And we don't have to sell a full box, by the way. Uh, Trust me, I'll sell a dozen at a throw instead of 24.
Mhm.
I think $10 is a good amount. I mean, it's a nice round amount, and
And it's
I
still a
think it's very
deal.
fair.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think so?
And they're new condition, right? So
Oh yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
mean,
Sealed
yeah,
boxes.
10 or 15 or something, I think would
Oh,
be even
Kevin,
still
can
is,
you
yeah.
can you give us the background? I think this was well before my time on the commission. Like, did the commission pay to have those printed, and how much did we pay for them a piece? Obviously, we were, the cover price is $30, but did we ever sell them for $30? Like, I knowing the background, the history would be kind of helpful here.
I'm sorry, I'm don't mean to look away from you or from the screen, but I'm trying to look where my copy is. I got it in here somewhere. God only knows I've got hundreds, like I said, but not at reach. Annie, I actually don't know. I
Okay.
don't, how the society and the commission were so commingled.
Right.
I I don't know what Michael said to me when he was offloading these books to my possession. He goes, I told him not to reprint this damn thing. I was like, well, all right. So, he just had no interest. I mean, they've moved so much stuff and they have so much stuff, over at the new hall that he just wanted out from under. Um, the
I believe the book itself says it's the society.
That's exactly right. It was
Yeah.
published by the society. So I'm not sure the funding. I don't think it was commissioned stuff. I mean, essentially the society is gifting us this stuff. And I was eager to take it because I thought, my God, if we could get even $5 a book, but let's say 10, we had the potential to raise several $1,000s if we moved all of them for the kitty and at the very least, and keep, we'll keep us a decent amount to give. I think every time somebody joins the historical commission, if they don't have one, we give them one, obviously, and then sell the rest and try to make a few grand.
I think it would be
And
good. I think it'd be, sorry, Grant.
no, go ahead.
I think it might also be good to incorporate as a thank you to those who partner with us for the signs.
Yeah, I mean, we could, gift one with the signs or with the donation. Then we,
Yeah.
thank you for donating, and here's a book. I don't have any objection to that either.
And I think just apart from the monetary aspect of it as well, like one of our master plan goals is to educate the town about its history, right? And this is like the definitive document from what I've seen about the go-to source. So I think the more of them that we get out there that into the hands of residents, the better.
Well, I think what we could do is, if this was amenable to folks, if you want to I think there's a consensus to set a sort of $10 price for these. See if, local brokers, agents, are interested, and they don't have to buy a full box, but, um, I think that's a way that we might be able to lighten my load, quickly of some of them, and then, gift them with the signs. And we might, what is the price that right now the typical donation is $75, right? That's what we ask or suggest as a donation. I mean, we could raise it to 80, and everybody's still getting a deal. You get the sign and the book, or just up the recommended donation slightly.
Mm,
Or just leave it at 75.
yeah, I'd
Yeah,
leave
I
it at
would
75, but
decouple it. Yeah.
Fine, that's fine. And then,
But I think we could put it separately. It doesn't have to be its own program, but Also, if you'd like a copy, donate whatever, $15, and
Yeah.
we'll give you a copy. Because I think there might be people out there who don't know about it or
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I just don't want to be in the business of mailing books all over town or delivering them, frankly. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
too
You have
much.
a
So,
you have a few realtors within walking distance to you, Kevin.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I don't mind putting a box in my trunk and dropping it off
Mhm.
here or there. It's just, I don't want to be taking individual books, and none of you want to do it either, I'm sure.
right.
Like all over.
Well, I Um, I do think it's a great idea to kind of get them into the hands of the public somehow. Could we do, if we could do some sort of like honor system where like I have a box on my covered front porch and like a little cash box that someone could put $10 in, and it's kind of like self-serve. They can just stop by and like grab a book. Like I would be more than willing to be a stop for that. That's kind of like light lifting and we can get it into more people's hands.
Yeah, and I mean, we could even inquire at I'm reluctant to create work for people at the townhouse, and they might not cotton to that too much, turn them into booksellers. But we could always inquire if
Mm-hmm.
somebody who, the forward-facing um, people there would be.
But we could also set that up at the library.
That's true. We could
Yeah.
talk to Ryan Donahue and see if he's amenable to that. You mean like the honor thing that Annie's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like whether it's a donation box or however you want to do it, but I mean, certainly they, that area down by the children's room, they have both an area where they are selling some books that are used, and then they're also having a whole stack that's free. But I think, if we're looking at trying to maximize um, just, eyes on the book itself, if it was at the library with a suggested donation, um, you know, that might be a really good place to start.
Yeah,
Great
Idea.
idea.
somebody willing to go down and talk to Ryan Donahue about this? And Mr. Vice Chair, are you interested in that?
I'm happy to send him an email. I don't think I would go there, but I'll call him or send him an email.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And so let's say everyone in agreement you want to go for the $10 for this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's set. Give it to people that donate get a house sign and then make the donation. You follow up and yes, there's a book available for you. Is that am I hearing it right? How you wanted to do that?
Mhm.
Okay. And then I'm happy to make some queries to some of the local agents, brokers, if they're interested in. Okay, I just think, if you happen to be selling a house, that's a historic house, or you have a client that's buying a house, I think it might,
That's really nice. Yeah.
make sort of sense to me that it might be something, it's a pretty low cost, item to give to somebody. And beyond that, if we get, if Annie has success, I'm fine with the sort of donation kind of thing. If you want to set one up at your house, or if you have success with Ryan, if he's amenable to that,
Yeah.
we just take a box down there, put a little, however they collect them, if they're willing to collect it for us, and just put a little ledger that, oh yeah, this is the Historical Commission's money.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We don't have to vote this, do we? Are you all okay with this?
Mhm.
Just
Kevin, I have one question, like logistical question. Do you want to know who has bought a book? Um, my question is because in our donation account, we have been trying to keep track of who has donated in exchange for the signs. So would you want us to keep track of names and how much they've paid so we have an accurate ledger in that donation account?
I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I personally don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care either.
Just another
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, just there's probably going to be a lot more of them, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a lower dollar amount. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. Good. Let's go forward. We'll get off this, and thank you for your patience. I got one. The other fairly substantial. I'll try to do it as quick as I can. Is to talk about this rural cemetery water tower thing. Um, Here's where we're at. This has been a long odyssey. I've been on this for over a year and a half. We were in this cycle, the last CPC cycle on this, and pulled it back. I was working with Bill Cundiff. The CPC ask was for a more comprehensive evaluation. I've explained this. And I sought it. I talked to a lot of different experts. As I indicated, we got this fellow, Dennis Semperbon, who's really top notch, runs a very highly regarded restoration company. He came out and looked at it. I've described this to you. We did the lift inspection for several hours. Since our last meeting, he's again come back out with his roofers, and we he their roofers got up on a huge ladder up to that roof line. Again, this was with the full knowledge and consent and insurance waivers and all that stuff of the Mr. Cundiff and Mark Purple, and inspected the roof again. So we've got Dennis has collected a lot of information. And at the point that we were sitting, I think I had covered this with you. The next step to have a really accurate number for CPC would require a full write-up, the research documents that can be taken out to bid and all that stuff. Similar to what has been done now for the the granite post and iron rail fencing project. And I didn't indicate the number, what that would be, but I will now. And it was $5,000 for the full study that, again, would give you a complete analysis of the building and a plan to bid it out, execute the project, and a scheduled plan of maintenance, which is CPC wants to see as part of it. So that's where we were sitting, and it was me trying to figure out how we were going to get that money. And I talked to both the CPC chair and the select board chair on the subject, and was making some progress. However, I walk that cemetery quite frequently, and I think about this tower and the cemetery and the space issues and stuff that I know is going on in town all the time. And some of the concerns at the cemetery, which is, of course, the rural cemetery is the only operating cemetery in Southborough, and how limited the space is and how it is rapidly going away. Especially if you look at the new part, there's not much space there already since I've moved to town 6 years ago. It's really rapidly filling up, and the issue of space in that cemetery is sort of a freight train coming at the town. Unless you want to lose the golf course across the street, something's going to have to be done at some point. I'm also aware of the trends in burials and the move toward cremation, and you may see where I'm going with this. I think Dan does for sure. And that is, it hit me like a bolt from the blue, an idea that I thought was so unusual in a certain way and so outrageous that I was afraid to tell it to anybody because I thought they would just laugh. But I was quietly doing some research about this in recent weeks and becoming more encouraged. And I did mention it briefly to Grant, so you know what I'm talking about as well. But what I did do is I reached out to an architectural firm in Boston called William Rawn Associates, and they're a nationally known firm. And actually, let me share this with you because I think you'll find this kind of interesting. My screen. This is some of the projects that you'll see why I reached out to this particular architecture firm in a moment, but just to give you an idea, stuff that this is for the city of Cambridge, Rochester Institute of Technology. This is a Harvard Business School, the Klarman Hall that they've done. Work at the Museum of Science, Duke University, Berklee College of Music, the GSA in Cedar Rapids, Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. But this is the one I want you to see. Mount Auburn Cemetery. Project that I was aware that they had done recently at the Bigelow Chapel, which they did this big, rather impressive glass addition and new crematory, and there's a columbarium involved in this. And it's quite impressive work. And I reached out to this firm with the following note. I sent them a picture of the water tower. And I said, this may be a crazy idea, folks, but I have a notion, and I can't stress to you enough how unusual, how truly rare. I'm not aware of any similar other water tower in Massachusetts in a cemetery than that. It's actually exceedingly rare. There's a stone water tower in the old Grafton State Hospital that's falling down. It's like a ruin. There's an observation sort of stone tower in a cemetery in Milford, but there's nothing like this. So I sent them a photo of the tower, and I described its history very briefly, and said, my notion, and it may be crazy, is that this could be a columbarium. In other words, a repository for the ashes, of the departed. And quite a striking and beautiful one. And, incidentally, conventional burial depends on the site conditions and the density and placement and things like that, and how many access roads there are. But you roughly get about 1,000 interments per acre. A building like this, let's say if it held even 100, let's say 200 bodies, it would be about 2/10 of an acre's worth of land saved at 8,700 square feet. It's a very substantial portion of land. But anyway, so I sent them the thing, and I simply said, here's my crazy idea. Here's a picture of this tower. Here's a little bit of history. Let me know if you have any interest. I heard back from a principal of the firm the next business day who said, no, this is not a crazy idea. And actually, we're quite interested. And actually, the principal that reached out to me, in other words, one of the partners of the firm, was the gentleman who superintended the project, this project at Mount Auburn. So I said, wow, that's really interesting. Let me stop the share and get back to the full screen. What would be involved here? And we had a long discussion about the possibilities. I don't expect all of you to be up on the latest of the art of the cemetery and interments, but and I'm no expert, trust me, but I spent a lot of time looking into this, and you know, the human remains take up this about the size of a hat box, and how much could you put in a building like this, and what are the accessibility requirements? And one of the things that Sam Lasky, that's the guy from William Rahn Associates that I was talking to, said, you know, in the Mount Auburn situation, they had a balcony where it was not fully accessible, and the state actually allowed them to have a kind of camera system so that people could see what they could not physically access. And if you look into this, this is a big thing in a lot of countries, actually in Asia, where they have sort of high-rise columbaria that you know, in Japan, there's one where an automated system will bring the remains like in the box. You know, it's almost like a remote retrieval system, and we'll bring it down to a central area where you can light incense and, you know, worship. And then the thing picks it up and puts it back into its place. I imagine a kind of adaptive reuse of the rural cemetery water tower, where it has a beautiful slate roof, where the lancet windows are possibly replaced with glass or stained glass, where you had a glass where the doors are is now glass, and you can see into this beautiful lit space with a semicircular array of, you know, and you'd have a cenotaph probably outside that had the names of all the dead who were interred in this inside the building. I would love to be in it. And where was I going with this? There's something else about this that's really important that I'm now blanking on. So, well, and you know, one of the things that came up with the architect that I was speaking with, he said, you know, you'd have to think of this. One of the things that partly got me thinking this way, here's what I had forgotten. Just remember that water tower, when it was built in 1903, it was built as a utilitarian structure. It wasn't an ornamental thing. It's built beautifully. And one of the things I found out from Dennis coming out and looking at it so extensively is that it's built to last. He said, you know, yeah, it needs work, it needs pointing, replacement of some bad mortar patches, it needs a roof, the lancet windows, rehab of the doors. However, it was wonderfully built. And it was built as a utilitarian structure. You know, the windmill, the water tank, pumps up the water, gravity feed for irrigation. But its life as a useful building in the sense of serving a function for the town was but 30 years, from 1903 to its decommissioning in 1933. For the last 92 years, it sat there as, you know, it's a beautiful relic that has housed, you know, a skid that they drag when they're doing the graves, and rakes. You know, in other words, it's lost all utility. And I thought to myself, you know, gosh, Kevin, how did you miss this until now? Like, think big. Imagine this building coming back and serving a purpose again, and one that's uniquely timely, because I believe, isn't it upwards of half of all interments now are of cremated remains. It's a cost thing. It's a space thing. So I got very excited about it, and I thought, again, I kind of kept my mouth shut about it for a while, and it percolated in my head, and I thought, I'm not going to say this to anybody because people are going to laugh at me. And then I brought it to, you know, again, a very well-known architecture firm, and again, I sent the email out on a Friday. On a Monday morning, I had the reply, and it was, we're interested. We think this is a good idea. And and the upshot of my conversation with the gentleman was that he was recommending a feasibility study. So I did, at and sorry, I'll wrap this up momentarily. I did, what was it? Monday was the town volunteer breakfast thing, and I went to that, and I ran into a couple of the select board members too, and I had conversations with both of them, and I brought this out somewhat sheepishly, but happily. And one of the responses was quite enthusiastic, and the other one was a little bit more measured, not negative, but cautious, which is, I think, a very reasonable response. That where I'm at with this, and I said, and I would say to you, and I want to get this out because I think it's important to be public from the jump with this and not to do things, and I want you to know about it and want to know your interest and if you're interested in going forward on this idea, because I can't do this by myself and I don't want to. But I think, and I said to one of the select board members that I was talking to about this, again, just casually, I said, listen, ultimately, there's a part of me that I don't care if this idea flies. I want to see that tower preserved. It must be preserved, and it's preservable, and it deserves to be preserved for its own sake and for its own right, for the story it tells, for its aesthetic beauty, for its importance to the history of the town in terms of municipal water supply and what it tells us about where we've been. But you saw, for instance, the almost immediate blowback in some quarters about the money spent on the fence. Now, the fence around the common has actually utilitarian value from a matter of public safety. This is why Grant was on the group, the St. Mark Street Park Working Group, and so was Dan for a while. Why the members of that group fought so hard to get that stone wall. It's both aesthetics, but also safety at an intersection like that, and it's the same thing with the fence. But nonetheless, as soon as the fence thing passed, there was this blowback about spending money on something that some people at least perceive as sort of a frill. Why do we need this fence? So I do think that, if, let's say, the cost to restore the tower, just as a beautiful relic of the past, was upwards of 6 figures, which I think likely. But if the cost to convert that tower into sacred space that after all already occupies hallowed ground in the heart of the cemetery, and to make it someplace that would, and by the way, of course, cremation plots tend to be a less expensive option than conventional full burial plots. And, Mr. Lasky said to me, look, you can't view this as a money-making operation, but you might hope to break even. In other words, if you were to, let's say you were to spend $100,000 just to restore the tower to be nothing but a place where people put rakes, or if you spent $300,000 or $400,000 to make that tower beautiful and eternal, in the sense that it would then hold the remains of, I don't know how many, but let's just take a guess, a couple hundred people. You'd be on the winning side of it, especially with, again, space at a premium in the town. So sorry for the big, long-winded story, but I kind of wanted you to really know where I was coming from and thinking about. And again, the fact that somebody with real expertise in this was highly encouraging, really made me feel pretty good about it. But if you guys think it's a crazy idea and don't want to do it, say so, because I'm willing to drop it. But I'm also willing to go forward to the select board and wherever else I need to go with your support and say, hey, before we drop a lot of CPC money on something that's going to be beautiful but serve no purpose, should we spend some money and some time considering restoring this thing to something that's beautiful and actually serves the life of the town? Because Southborough's to me is kind of in this very odd position. We just had this big thing where we're going to put the Costco and all that stuff. There's not much open space in this town, and you know I would Andy would know better on this than I would, but a buildable land in Southborough, it's about it's like $1 million an acre, you know.
That's on the premium
That's
side, but
the
it's
premium
quite
side.
expensive. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So and where are we gonna go? I mean, where is the cemetery going to expand? It's all DCR, it's marshland. You can't put. Are we going to take the golf course and turn that into cemetery someday? So anyway, interested in your thoughts and what you think, because I can't be alone with this thing. I either have to pursue it or drop it. And like I said, now that I had gotten the interest from such a prominent architectural firm, I feel less bashful about bringing the idea to you all.
I guess I'll start. Just a couple things from a CPC perspective. So the current CPA application, well, any application for historic restoration has to be restored to the sorry, I'm blanking, the Secretary of the Interior standards,
Right.
which is if it's not in the CPA, you know, it's the kind of expectation. So in terms of doing like a modern build out or something like that, or glass doors, where that's kind of where we got into this whole thing to begin with, in terms of holding up the project to figure out what the exact roofing material was and that kind of thing. I don't think, at least for CPA funds, that would be eligible. If you were able to do this within keeping the historic exterior and everything, that's a different question.
My thought on that, Grant, was I was prepared for the fact that if what I'm talking about were to go forward, it would probably not be with CPA money.
Okay.
It would probably be, it would have to come, at general funds. I mean, it would be like buying, because it's like basically expanding the capacity of the cemetery. And I was very conscious. Somebody said to me, well, there are spaces for that. In the new section, there's that kind of berm that it faces south. There's a path. I don't know if any of you walked it. It hasn't been particularly popular. And there was at least some speculation because it doesn't feel all that especially attractive to buyers of such plots. But I frankly think that the tower, restored in the manner that I'm thinking of, it would be such an unbelievably beautiful, striking, feature, very prominent. You know what I mean? Like I would personally, I, I, I was thinking, gosh, I would love to be like, if somebody said, "Where's Miller?" and they said, "In the tower," I would be thrilled. Like like I would love to be there for all eternity.
And then the only other thing other than that, so that's good to know, I guess. I don't know. Like in terms of the decision about this, I feel like this is like the decision about the cemetery itself would probably be for like the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds or the Select Board itself, I think, in order to go this route. So I guess I'm kind of curious what historical's involvement in this would be. Like, I think we already are behind the building, making sure that the building is preserved. But in terms of the use of the building, I'm not sure. Like, thanks for bringing up the idea, obviously. But in terms of the commission, I'm not sure what the commission's role is.
Well, again, good point. I think the town is in a funny position right now because, of course, there's a proposal on the table to reestablish a cemetery commission, which doesn't exist, was abolished, some time ago. And I went before the select board and supported the DPW, Mr. Cundiff's position that he wants a cemetery commission reconstituted, and I'm supportive of that. So yeah, the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds, the Select Board, what involvement would we have? I mean, it may well be more in a secondary role, which I'm fine with. Lord knows, when I joined the Historical Commission, I never conceived of myself as supervising, some kind of adaptive reuse in a cemetery. And that's the way I see it, as a kind of adaptive reuse play. And it may be a little bit heretical to think of any alteration of the tower, but I think I see it both as a historic asset, but also the potential. I always brought back to the idea that it was a utilitarian structure to start, and it has the potential, under the kind of principle of adaptive reuse, to serve the town again and to remain beautiful. It's really, but it is a philosophical kind of debate. I think a really strict preservationist would recoil at what I'm proposing. But I don't, I think there's an opportunity to make the building alive again, ironically. That sounds like somewhat of an ironical statement, but I mean it as a living presence for the town, a place that people would go visit to, visit their loved ones, so anyway, do other people have thoughts on this? Michelle or Dan, or you're just like stunned at how.
I'm a little bit stunned, Kevin, and I'm thinking to myself that I think you better not reduce your budget.
Yeah, well, we won't be paying for this, that's for sure. This would be but look, you just remember that the town appropriated by a single vote $300,000 for the St. Mark's Bell Tower. So this is likely to be somewhat costly, but again, you're going to collect money. I think on CPC there's discussion about wanting a preservation restriction on the tower, and I completely understand where that impulse arises, because there's this kind of suspicion that at some point, and even though it occupies a relatively small footprint, that the town will either walk away from the building and allow it to decay, or decide that even that small amount of space is preferable to have cleared of this relic than to preserve it. And, again, one thing that does occur to me is if you gave this building a function, you wouldn't need to be spending money on what effectively is paperwork for a PR. You would actually, if there were the remains of people's family members in there, there wouldn't be a conversation about it ever going anywhere. It would be under perpetual care, like the whole rest of the cemetery. So that's just the thought. Dana, I'm curious or Annie, if you've thoughts?
Um, yeah, I'll just say I think it's an interesting idea and out of the box. And I guess I would say I'm not really prepared to say like I support it or I don't, but I think it's, definitely good to consider and continue the conversation.
Yeah, and I was going to, Sam Lasky again from William Ron Associates in Boston, indicated that he would like to come out and look at the tower, uh, and get a better sense of it. And I said, that sounds great. Thanks very much. I want to talk to my group, and I want to start having some preliminary conversations around town. What I worry, of course, is, Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, it's by next Wednesday that the CPC people whose schedule and deadlines I'm trying to honor want more information from me about moving this forward. And I hesitate to derail the forward motion on that.
I mean, we've
I
had
don't want to miss, I
we've had
don't,
applications that have been pulled up until town meeting and that kind of thing. So if you could go a different path, you go a different path. That's just the way it is. But if if we make a determination, or if whoever makes a determination that we're not going to pursue the CPC route, then that would be good to know. That's all. But I don't think next week has we obviously want to, if you're going to be proceeding forward with the CPA process, then that would be the case. But yeah.
right. Yeah. So we can continue to move on that. In other words, on parallel tracks until, the point that they might diverge, and then you have to choose one line or the other. But Dan, you're kind of, I think you're wrestling internally with this.
And right, so just to make a very quick observation, and I think I agree with Grant on a number of things here too, in terms of what the role of this commission is in relation to the tower. What I would say is that repurposing and reusing historic buildings prevents the loss of historic buildings. And so oftentimes commissions like these are, do you have something that stands just as a monument? How many monuments does the town need? And is the tower itself a monument, or is it designed to be something more? But I think the role of the council would be, of this commission would be looking at any, would be in voting on whether or not we approve of the town to do this or not. I guess that's kind of
Right.
But not really to give the go ahead. I don't think we have the ability to give the go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, we would be, and this is the thing that I feel about it. I don't have these proprietary feelings that I am fully prepared to sort of hand this off, and say, go do it. And if the commission would be willing to support that kind of use, and I do agree with you completely, Dan, this is the essence of what I'm trying to advance, is that I think a building that has a historic building that has a function has a much greater chance of survival in the long run. And preservation restriction or CPC money or not. And I think I was thinking with dual hats when this idea came to me initially, was both as a chair of historical and as a preservationist, and also as a citizen of the community, who very much aware, because I've seen the select board meetings where this conversation has come up. It comes up periodically and then recedes, a little bit like the tide, that, oh, we have a problem coming. with cemetery space in this town. We have a problem coming with cemetery space. We're running out of space. What are we going to do? You know, and I haven't heard anything approaching a solution to that. And you know, I'm just aware of the trend toward cremation. And in fact, I was telling Sam, the Ron guy, that a friend of mine's wife was buried recently in Mount Auburn, and he was commenting to me among the sadnesses, a subset of the much greater sadness was the tremendous cost of buying a conventional burial plot in Mount Auburn, which is where she wanted to be. And fortunately, he had the means to do it. But it, you know, the space is at a premium and it's very expensive. And it's actually, to me, an affordability issue in town. Because of the cost, if people who want to be in Southborough, even as they depart this world, can't be here because of cost. We've not, you know what I mean? We haven't done the service that we could, and presumably vaults or slots in a columbarium in the water tower would be considerably cheaper than, you know, in-ground, you know, conventional burial. Anyway, so I don't know. I get that. I don't think that people want to. I don't think there's a vote to be taken. Like I said, I am one of six, and you know, I bow to the will of the group. If the group thought that this was a ridiculous idea and wanted me to abandon it forthwith, you know, I would say, okay, if you're all right with it, I'll at least get Mr. Lasky out here and have some discussion directly with the select board on a more official basis about whether they would be interested in funding a feasibility study. And we can pursue on a parallel track strictly the preservation of the building under the auspices of the CPC and CPA funding. Does that sit okay with people?
I mean, to be honest, Kevin, I don't feel very strongly one way or another about the idea. So I guess I'd be fine moving forward with it. My main concern is the preservation of the building. So, you know, any attempts at doing this, you know, I think have to include a preservationist, you know, mindset. I don't want the select board to get its idea into, you know, an idea into its head that we should knock it down and build a brand new columbarium there instead, or that would
No,
house even more people or something like that, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a non-starter for me. I mean,
Yeah.
it either, in other words, the existing tower stays exactly as it is, with the exception of, you know, I think where I'm at is that I'd be willing to, when I was talking with the architect, we were talking about, you know, getting natural light in there through those lancet windows, which are currently now just, you know, louvered wood shutters, basically. And there was some discussion about the door and whether you only had access at certain times or whether you had something that was, but recall that those doors are reproductions. The existing doors, they're not the original doors from 1903. They were rebuilt in the last 20 years. That whether those doors gave way to some sort of glass, that was my own personal, you know, view of it. But yeah, no, I would not consider at all, you know, this is not an invitation to take down the tower and build something new. It's an invitation to make the tower a meaningful destination for people in the community and not just something they walk by and, you know, a repository for rakes. That, you know, that's where I was at.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know, maybe others should go first on this, I guess. Yeah, I'm not really sure where I stand on it.
Okay. Annie or Michelle, anything further?
I don't have anything more.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to get Mr. Lasky out to look at it, and I'd like to see if that, listen, if there's no appetite for this at the select board, or with the commissioners of trust funds, it's a dead duck, you know. But other than a casual conversation over a plate of scrambled eggs, I didn't want to pursue anything further without, bringing it to you and seeing if you were at least willing to go along for the ride for a while. And, they may come out and the architect may come out and look at it and say to me, well, yeah, I thought it was a good idea when you sent me the picture, but now that I see the building, there's no way, I just don't know. So, all right, I will move forward, tentatively. And we'll see what happens. But you're also welcome to say, if the group doesn't want me to do it, I won't do it. Blowing in the wind. All right. We'll baby steps, see if there's anything there. Michelle, is there anything from Tricentennial we should know about?
No, the one thing is that things are moving along in as far as the historic part. We had a meeting this afternoon with Sally Waters is on the cemetery commission, and Deb Constine, and they're very much into the historic end of things. So they're doing all the research. So that's for the cemetery reenactment. And also today I had the pleasure of interviewing. I don't know if anyone here on the commission knows Bob Delarda. He is probably one of the oldest longtime residents in Southborough. He's lived here for 96 years.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to talk to him. It was really just like opening up your eyes to a whole different world. He graduated from Peters High. He went from Peters High, he went along with 300 other Southborough residents and worked at Deerfoot Farms in the meat packing plant, where he met his wife, who was the Spice Girl there. And he just, spoke about how his family came to Southborough, and there was a whole Italian section of Southborough, which I had no idea, over in Fayetteville. And Annie, this was really interesting. He said that he and his friends used to go up on Oak Hill with their sleds, and they would slide down Oak Hill Road right across Route 9 into Fayetteville.
Oh my
was-
gosh, that's
It was
crazy.
really quite interesting, the whole thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, there's a few people, and the studio is back open. They had some technical difficulties there over the summer, but it's back open, and Terry is gracious and will work. And we have a few other people. So I don't know if anyone is interested in doing a couple of these interviews. It's really, you don't have to do much because these people want to speak. They want to tell their story. They want to tell about Southborough. So I can send out a list of potential interviewees if there's somebody in particular you want to speak to. It takes about a half an hour. Although today was quite interesting. It was an hour and a half because because of the age, we got a lot of extra stories there. So it's really a great way of preserving history.
That's awesome, Michelle. It sounds like the whole enterprise paid for itself today, basically, if you know what I mean. That's wonderful. Yeah,
It is
send out that list to all of us. That's a we can do that, and maybe somebody, spots a name or, sparks some interest. I think it's great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Grant, I know CPC meets next week, and you're moving forward on several things, and
Yep.
I've thrown a monkey wrench into all of it, at least so far as our tower bid is concerned.
Yeah, no real update. I think since our last meeting, we had an additional meeting to meet with the applicants who presented the projects and kind of answered a series of questions that we'd asked in a letter to them. So that was helpful in getting more information about where each of the three projects stand. I think we were planning in early October to make a vote of eligibility, which kind of got pushed due to scheduling reasons. So I think that will happen at our next meeting. And then we're working towards an end of December deadline for finalizing warrant articles and everything. So that'd be much earlier than in prior years where we've gone right up until closing out the warrant and beyond, all the way up to town meetings. So we're trying to do earlier this year.
Yeah, no, it's a very good group, and when was it that I came to that meeting and appeared, and sort of a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, mid-October, I want to say. I don't remember the date. Yeah.
Yeah, and the group is always very gracious hosts. So we'll keep moving forward on their, hopefully keep pace with the group's deadlines. So now we have minutes of October 1st. I sent Grant some edits myself. Yeah, I've just enabled your request there. So my suggestions are in. Oh, is that the copy that I sent, Grant?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull it up. Sorry, having a bit of trouble.
It looked like a lot. I was just some of it was just getting some things kind of more consistent, I thought.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of it, but I just thought I'd share it so everybody can see. Yeah. I'll just do a slow scroll if that works. Is that too slow? Too fast?
Not for me. But it always looks so unbelievably intimidating in track changes in Word when it's
Oh, yeah.
really
With all the lines. Yeah.
quite relatively minor.
Yeah. As I said, I agree with all these. Thanks for catching that vote, by the way.
Yeah, but you had it as 4-0. I think it was really 5-0.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so those were I don't know, did other folks have edits that they wanted to get in? No, Michelle, no, Dan, I can't see Annie. Were you okay, Annie, with the?
Yep.
Okay.
Everyone's okay. I think it was all minor cleanup, mostly on just the consistency of presentation, right, Grant? I think.
Yep.
The one thing of substance I caught was the 5-0 versus 4-0 vote. So I will move that we approve the minutes of October 1st, 2025 as amended.
Second.
Moved.
Oh.
Or second. Yeah, sorry, second.
Okay, seconded by Annie. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant?
Aye.
Annie?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Dan? 5-0. Approved. I would like to schedule one last meeting, if it's possible, in 2025 for either Monday, December 8th or Wednesday, December 10th. Any thoughts on this? This would be quite brief unless another demolition thing comes up. because it'll be just buttoning up a couple things. Maybe we can get the 24 East Main thing approved.
What
And
are the dates again, Kevin?
Monday, December 8th, or Wednesday, December 10th.
Yep.
Monday's better for
Either
me.
of those work.
Both work.
Dan, where are you at?
Wednesday would be better.
And Michelle, you said Monday would be better for you,
Mm.
right?
For me, yeah, that's
Right.
okay.
I'm gonna flip a coin. Monday is heads, Wednesday is tails. Is that all right with you people? Tails, Wednesday.
Okay,
You do it, Michelle?
I'll try.
Wednesday, December 10th is our next meeting. Any other business? I don't have any. Is there any public comment? I don't think there's anybody here. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Great. Motion by Michelle, second by Annie. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
I was really hoping that somebody would say, no, I want more. 5-0 to adjourn. We're done. Thank you.
Good night.
Great. Thanks,
Night,
everyone.
Good night,
guys.
everybody.
Okay.
See you
Thank
soon.